Hello, this is Shay Jackson with Hype Math and Reading. In today's video, we will be reviewing for the 2022 Texas STAAR math test for 4th graders. Our concepts is fractions. This is part 3. Remember, 4th graders, every day may not be good, but there is something good in every day. We have our 4th grade math and reading review workbooks available for purchase in our store. The links are in the description box so that you can grab yours today. Do you need a math or reading tutor? We offer virtual one-on-one and group tutoring for 2nd to 8th grade students. Parents, there is a link in the description box for you to request a free 30-minute consultation. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, click that notification bell, and press the like button so that you will be alerted to new videos we upload, and also spread the word about Hype Math and Reading. We greatly appreciate your support. So let's dive in to our fractions review. First, we're going to talk about equivalent fractions. They are fractions that have different numerators and denominators, but equal the same amount. And let's look at our example. We have 1/4 is equal to 2/8 is equal to 4/16. Now, starting with 1/4, the way that we can discover that 2/8 is an equivalent fraction is by multiplying the numerator and denominator by the same number. We see in our picture that we have 2 1/8 blocks. So what we need to do is multiply 4 times 2, that is equal to 8, and 1 times 2 for our numerator is 2, so 2/8 is our equivalent fraction. Also, for 4/16, we're going to do the same thing. If you notice, we have 4 1/16 blocks. So what we need to do again is multiply our numerator and denominator by the same number. Starting with our numerators, 1 times 4 is equal to 4. 4 times 4 is equal to 16. So we can see that 1/4 is equal to 4/16. Now let's talk about comparing and ordering fractions. One thing to remember, 4th graders, is that the alligator mouth always opens up to the largest or biggest number. So let's look at our examples. On the left-hand side, we have 2 squares. 1 square is divided into 4 equal parts, and 3 of those parts are shaded, so my fraction is 3/4. And for my square on the right-hand side, it is divided into 8 equal parts, and of that, 6 of those parts are shaded. And you see that based on our drawing, even though the numerator and denominators are different, the value is still the same. Let's look at our example on the right-hand side. We have 2/3 is greater than 2/4. Well, in order for us to find that, what we must do, since our fractions are different, we must find the least common denominator. Sometimes you'll hear least common multiple. So the least common denominator of 3 and 4 is equal to 12. Now that I know what my least common denominator, or LCD, is, now I can find my equivalent fraction, so both 2/3 and 2/4 can have the same fraction, okay? So let's start with 2/3. We know that our fraction, our denominator, is 12. So I'm going to ask myself, what number multiplied by 3 is equal to 12? And that is 4. And yes, whatever we multiply on the bottom, we must also multiply by our numerator as well. So multiplying 2 times 4 is equal to 8, and 3 times 4 for my denominator is equal to 12. So 2/3, the equivalent fraction, is equal to 8/12. Now let's look at 2/4. Again, we know our LCD, or you may see LCM as well, is equal to 12. So I am going to ask myself, what number multiplied by 4 is equal to 12? And it is 3. So 4 times 3 is equal to 12. That's my denominator. Moving on up to the numerator, 2 times 3 is equal to 6. So my equivalent fraction for 2/4 is equal to 6/12. Now that both of my fractions have the same denominator, in order for me to compare the fractions, what all I need to do is focus on is my numerator. And yes, 8 is greater than 6, so 8/12 is greater than 6/12, or 2/3 is greater than 2/4. Now let's look at number 21. And remember, we have our 4th grade math review workbook available for purchase in our store. Which comparison is true? Is it F, 1/5 is less than 2/4? G, 2/3 is less than 1/2? H, 1/4 is less than 2/10? And J, 1/3 is less than 2/7? In order for me to solve this problem, the first thing I need to ask myself is, what am I looking for? Well, I am looking for the fraction comparison that is true. Now that I know what I'm looking for, the next thing I need to ask myself is, what information can help us find the answer? And it's a lot. So first, we need to find our least common denominator, and then after that, we're going to find our equivalent fractions with our LCD, okay? So let's start with F. We have 1/5 is less than 2/4. So I need to find the LCD of 4 and 5, and you see that we have that listed. And whenever you're finding the multiples, and that's why you hear LCM, sometimes it's because we're finding the least common multiple, or the smallest number that both numbers can go into evenly, okay? So I put some of the multiples of 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. And for 5, it is 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. And we found our winner. It is 20. So the LCD of 4 and 5 is equal to 20. Now let's look at our equivalent fractions, okay? 1/5, and again, because our LCD is 20, we need to multiply our numerator and denominator by 4. 1 times 4 is equal to 4 for our numerator, and 5 times 4 is equal to 20 for our denominator. So now my equivalent fraction of 1/5 is equal to 4/20. Now let's look at 2/4. Again, our LCD is 20, and that means I need to multiply my numerator and denominator by 5. Multiplying my numerators across, 2 times 5 is equal to 10. 4 times 5 is equal to 20. So my equivalent fraction for 2/4 is 10/20. Now let's move to G. We have 2/3 is less than 1/2, and yes, we need to find our LCD because our denominators are different. So my multiples of 2 are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and my multiples of 3 are 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and so on. That's what the dots mean. It goes on for a very long time. But we just need to focus on just a few of those numbers. Now, if you notice that 2 and 3 have actually 2 common multiples. It's 6 and 12, but that's why we call it the LCM, or the least common multiple or least common denominator, because we want to find the smallest number that both numbers go into evenly, and that is 6. So now that I know what my LCD is, I'm going to find my equivalent fractions. Let's start with 2/3. Because we know that our denominator is 6, I am going to multiply my numerator and denominator by 2. Multiplying my numerators across, 2 times 2 is equal to 4. 3 times 2 is equal to 6. So my equivalent fraction for 2/3 is 4/6. Now let's look at 1/2. Again, My LCD is 6, so I'm going to multiply my numerator and denominator by 3. Multiplying my numerators across, 1 times 3 is equal to 3. 2 times 3 is equal to 6. So my equivalent fraction for 1/2 is 3/6. Now let's move down to H. We have 1/4 is less than 2/10. I have to find my LCD for 4 and 10, so my multiples are 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, and so on. For 4 and for 10, it is 10, 20, 30, and so on. And we found our LCD. It is 20. So the LCD of 4 and 10 is equal to 20. Now I can find my equivalent fractions. So since we know our LCD is 20, I'm going to multiply my numerator and denominator for 1/4 by 5. Multiplying my numerators going across, 1 times 5 is equal to 5. 4 times 5 is equal to 20. So my equivalent fraction for 1/4 is equal to 5/20. Now let's look at 2/10. Since our LCD is 20, I am going to multiply my numerator and denominator by 2. Multiplying my numerators across, 2 times 2 is equal to 4. 10 times 2 is equal to 20. So my equivalent fraction for 2/10 is equal to 4/20. Now let's look at J. We're almost there, 4th graders. Hang in there. We have 1/3 is less than 2/7. So I have to find my LCD. Again, writing my multiples, starting with 3, we have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. And for 7, we have 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, and so on. And we see that our LCD of 3 and 7 is equal to 21. Now that I have my LCD, I can find my equivalent fractions. So starting with 1/3, we are going to multiply our numerator and denominator by 7. 1 times 7, we're multiplying our numerators going across. 1 times 7 is equal to 7. 3 times 7 is equal to 21. So my equivalent fraction for 1/3 is equal to 7/21. Now let's look at 2/7. We are going to multiply our numerator and denominator by 3 because, again, my LCD for this set of fractions is 21. 2 times 3 for my numerators is equal to 6, and 7 times 3 is equal to 21. So my equivalent fraction for 2/7 is equal to 6/21. Whew, that was a mouthful. Now, after we have all that information, we need to figure out how we're going to solve the problem. And in order for us to do that, we need to compare our fractions with our least common denominator. And let's look, okay? So here, and the equivalent fractions are right below the answer choices, okay? So for 1/5 is less than 2/4 with our LCD being the same. It's 4/20 is less than 10/20. For G, we have 2/3 is less than 1/2, but with our equivalent fractions, it reads 4/6 is less than 3/6. For H, we have 1/4 is less than 2/10. And for our equivalent fractions, it is 5/20 is less than 4/20. And for J, we have 1/3 is less than 2/7. So our equivalent fraction is 7/21 is less than 6/21. Now that we know how to solve the problem, what is our correct answer? Well, what we need to do, and remember, once we have our denominators the same, all we need to do is look at our numerators. So for F, we're going to ask ourselves, is 4 less than 10? For G, we're going to ask, is 4 less than 3? For H, we're going to ask, is 5 less than 4? And for J, we're going to ask, is 7 less than 6? Okay, so with all of our answer choices, which comparison of the fractions is true? And if you said F, you're absolutely correct, because 4 is less than 10, which means 4 over 20 is less than 10 over 20, and that means 1/5 is less than 2/4. Now let's dive into question number 22. An office had 3 baskets of letters ready to be mailed. The first basket was 2/10 full. The second basket was 3/6 full, and the third basket was 1/5 full. Which comparison is true? Is it A, 1/5 is greater than 3/6? Is it B, 2/10 is equal to 1/5? Is it C, 3/6 is less than 2/10? Or is it D, 1/5 is greater than 2/10? And so the first question I need to ask myself is, what am I looking for? Again, we're looking for the fraction comparison that is true. Now that I know what we're looking for, the next question I need to ask myself is, what information can help find the answer? Well, we're going to go through just what we did before in our previous problem. We need to find the LCD, and then we need to get our discover what our equivalent fractions are. So for A, we have in our denominator 5 and 6. We can see that our LCD is 30. Do y'all see Miss Jackson did not highlight that? But we're going to highlight it right now, live and in real time, okay? Because y'all may be asking, well, Miss Jackson, you didn't highlight that one, and why? Don't want to confuse you, babies. All right, so we have 30 is our LCD. So now I can find my equivalent fraction. For 1/5, it's equal to 6 over 30. And for 3/6 is 15 over 30. Now let's look at B. We have 2/10 is equal to 1/5. We are going to look for our LCD, and that is 10. Now, for 2/10, we really don't have to do anything because 10 is already in the denominator. So all I did, just so you could understand the concept and you wouldn't kind of be lost, all we're doing is multiplying it by 1, okay? And anything multiplied by 1 is itself, okay? So we have 2/10, and then for 1/5, our equivalent fraction is 2/10. Now let's look at C. We have 3/6 is less than 2/10. We have to find our LCD, and we see that the LCD of 6 and 10 is equal to 30. Now I need to find my equivalent fractions, and they are, for 3/6 is 15 over 30, and for 2/10 is 6 over 30. And lastly, for D, we have 1/5 is greater than 2/10. We have our LCD for 10 and 5 is equal to 10. Now, again, we need to find our equivalent fractions. 1/5 is equal to 2/10, and 2/10, since it already has 10 in the fraction, we multiplied it by 1, but again, fourth graders, you really don't have to if your LCD, if you have a fraction where it already has the LCD, okay? So now that we have all of the information we need to solve the problem, the next thing we're going to do is ask ourselves, well, how do we solve this problem? And it's the same thing. We're going to compare the fractions with the LCD, or the least common denominator, okay, with our equivalent fractions. So let's take a look. For A, we have 1/5 is greater than 3/6, but we're going to focus on our equivalent fractions that have the LCD, okay? So 6 over 30 is greater than 15 over 30. For B, is 2/10 is equal to 2/10. For C, is 15 over 30 is less than 6 over 30. And for D, is 2/10 is greater than 2/10. So how do we solve the problem? we're going to look and all we need to do is take a look at our numerators because our denominators are the same, okay? So for A, we're going to ask, is 6 greater than 15? For B, is 2 equal to 2? For C, is 15 less than 6? And for D, is 2 greater than 2? So what is our correct answer, fourth graders? And if you said B, you're absolutely correct. 2/10 is equal to 2/10, or 2 is equal to 2, which means 2/10 is equal to 2/10, which means 2/10 is equal to 1/5. And that is it for our fractions review part 3. I know your head is probably as big as Texas, but that means you're smarter, and that's great. Okay, remember, if you need a tutor, there's a link in the description box for parents to sign up for a free 30-minute consultation. And we have our 4th grade math and reading review workbooks available in our store. This is Shay Jackson with Hype Math and Reading. I will talk to you later.